Right now your fingers are doing something strange. You press a small plastic rectangle and a letter appears on a screen. You've done it thousands of times today alone, and the tool you're using to do it was designed in 1873. Not inspired by 1873, not updated from 1873, designed in 1873. We have self-driving cars and gene editing tools and AI that writes poetry. But to talk to any of those machines, you use a layout built for a mechanical typewriter older than the light bulb. Nobody decided to keep the keyboard. It just never left. And that question, why, turns out to be one of the most revealing stories in the history of technology. Most people assume the answer is obvious. The keyboard works. It's fast. We're used to it. Why change it? But faster keyboards have existed. Better layouts have been tested. And they lost anyway. The real answer is stranger than efficiency. Stranger than habit. It has to do with how civilization locks itself into decisions made before anyone alive today was born. Let's start with Christopher Latham Sholes, because Sholes is the reason any of this happened. In 1868, Sholes was a newspaper editor and part-time inventor in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was trying to build a machine that could number the pages of books automatically. It didn't work. But while tinkering, he stumbled into building a typewriter instead. His first keyboard was alphabetical, A to Z, straight across, 2 rows. It was also a disaster. The mechanical arms that struck the paper, called type bars, kept jamming when you typed fast. Common letter pairs like TH or ST sat next to each other, so their type bars collided constantly. Sholes spent 4 years rearranging the letters to separate the most common pairs. By 1873, he sold the design to Remington, the gun manufacturer who mass-produced it. That layout became QWERTY, named for the first 6 letters on the top row. Here is what matters. QWERTY was not designed for human hands. It was designed around the mechanical limits of a machine that no longer exists. The typewriter jams were solved by 1910. Electric typewriters arrived in the 1930s. Every reason QWERTY was invented had vanished before your grandparents were born. But the layout stayed. In 1932, a professor at the University of Washington named August Dvorak decided to fix this. Dvorak spent years analyzing letter frequency in English, studying hand movement, and measuring typing strain. On a QWERTY keyboard, your fingers travel roughly 20 miles per day if you type full-time. On the Dvorak layout, that same workload drops to under 1 mile. He called it the Dvorak Simplified Keyboard, and it's still available on every major operating system today. You can switch to it right now in your settings. It takes 4 clicks. Almost nobody does. During World War II, the US Navy retrained 14 typists on Dvorak. The typists recovered their old speed within 52 hours and then surpassed it. The Navy's own report concluded the retraining would pay for itself after just 10 days. Still nothing changed. And here is why. The answer has a name. Economists call it path dependence. Path dependence means the best option often loses not because it's worse, but because switching costs too much. By the time Dvorak's keyboard existed, millions of people had already learned QWERTY. Typing schools taught QWERTY. Businesses hired QWERTY typists. Offices owned QWERTY machines. The entire infrastructure of early 20th century office work had crystallized around one man's 1873 workaround. Switching was not a technical problem, it was a coordination problem. Everyone had to switch at the same time, or switching alone made you slower and isolated. And nobody did. The keyboard survived not because it was the best tool, it survived because it arrived first. But that still doesn't answer the bigger question. Because it's not just about QWERTY versus Dvorak, it's about keyboards versus everything else. Voice, touch, gesture, neural interfaces, brain-computer links. We have tried to replace the keyboard entirely at least 6 serious times in the last 50 years. Every time the keyboard won. By 1997, IBM released VIA Voice, a consumer voice recognition product that worked reasonably well. By 2011, Apple launched Siri. By 2014, Amazon launched Alexa. Voice assistants entered over 90 million American homes by 2019, according to eMarketer. And yet, you still typed your last email. Voice is faster. Dictation runs at about 150 words per minute. Typing averages 40. Voice wins on raw speed. It's not close, but speed is not why you type. In 2019, researchers at Stanford published a study on text input across multiple devices and contexts. They found that people switch between input methods not based on speed, but based on social context. You don't dictate emails in an open office because it feels exposed. You don't talk to your phone on a quiet train because it feels rude. The keyboard is silent. It is invisible to the people around you. That is not a small thing. Writing is a solitary act performed in public spaces, and the keyboard lets you do both at once. When Apple launched the iPhone in 2007, Steve Jobs stood on stage and called the keyboard a problem. He said a fixed plastic keyboard was the wrong answer. The right answer was software. But when people needed to do serious work, they bought keyboards for their tablets. The iPad launched in 2010. By 2012, Apple's own keyboard cover was their fastest-selling accessory ever. The device that was supposed to kill the keyboard came with a keyboard. The reason cuts deep. Typing is not just output, it is also thinking. In 2014, psychologists Pam Mueller and Daniel Oppenheimer at Princeton and UCLA ran a now famous study. They had students take notes either by typing or by hand, then tested them on the material. Handwriters understood the material more deeply, even when typists wrote more total words. The physical act of pressing specific keys in the sequence encodes information differently than speaking. Your fingers are not just transcribing. They are participating in the thought. This is why writers who switch to dictation often describe the prose as feeling different, looser, more like talking, less like writing. And then there is the most radical challenger, the one that should, by every measure, have won by now. In 2023, BrainGate researchers at Stanford helped a paralyzed man type 62 words per minute using neural signals alone. That is faster than most people type with their hands. And yet, for the 8 billion people alive today who can move their fingers, the keyboard remains. Because neural interfaces require surgery, or sensors, or hardware you wear on your skull. The keyboard requires nothing but itself. It is durable, cheap, it works offline, it works anywhere. It fails almost never. There is a concept in engineering called good enough lock-in. It means when a tool is reliable enough, inexpensive enough, and familiar enough, the threshold for replacing it rises dramatically. The replacement doesn't just have to be better, it has to be so much better that it's worth rebuilding everything around it. The keyboard clears that bar every time. Not by being extraordinary, by being ordinary at an extraordinary level. But here is what almost everyone who tells this story gets wrong. The keyboard is not winning because we are too lazy or too stubborn to change. It is winning because each alternative solves a different problem than the one the keyboard actually solves. Voice is fast but loud. Touch is intuitive but slow for long-form thought. Neural is powerful but invasive. The keyboard is none of those things. It is quiet, precise, private, and fast enough. And it turns out fast enough in the right context beats faster every time. Every decade, we assume the newest technology will make the old one obsolete. Email was supposed to kill the letter. Video calls were supposed to kill business travel. GPS was supposed to kill getting lost. But old tools rarely die because a better tool arrives. They die when the human need they were meeting disappears. And the human need for silent, solitary, precise thought has not disappeared. If anything, it's growing. Right now, your fingers are resting on something designed 150 years ago to prevent a machine from jamming. The machine is long gone. The solution to its problem outlasted everything it was designed for, every successor built to replace it, and every prediction about its death. Because it turns out the keyboard was never really about speed, or efficiency, or even letters. It was about giving your hands a way to think without making a sound. And until something replaces that, the keys stay.